going to be talking, I think I mentioned in the newsletter, about some of the arrangements under working with students, looking at what it is that we do in terms of our end of term arrangements. And we've had a look at a review because it was theoretically it was working well, but I think we felt that we could tidy things up a little bit. Oh, we've jumped a couple of slides there, Rachel. That's it. Theoretically, it was working well, but we wanted to make sure that we were trying to bring together all the perspectives, school, student, and family, so that we could get the areas of focus we want to be concentrating on ready before the end of term, so that everybody knew what we were going to be doing at the start of the new term. And so we had a look at the timelines for when we do the surveys, how we contact and communicate with families, and thinking about, through our weekly key working, how are we getting a sense of what the issues are going to be for next term? Because actually, we will have a very good idea about what the areas are going to be before we actually get to that survey time. The survey actually gives us a great evaluation, a student evaluation and a family evaluation, but actually, weekly key working helps us to get a sense of, these are going to be the prevailing issues. So the areas of focus, we've slightly changed the wording. We used to call them targets, but we now call them areas of focus, because some of the issues that people wanted to work on and have a bit of support with were not necessarily going to be addressed within a specific time frame. So we just wanted to call them areas of focus. And then we can think quite creatively about how we are going to work together to make those things happen. Now, those of you who are signed up with the PI and with your surveys will know that as you look at your data over time, and you'll see there, this is for a young person, and you can hopefully be able to see at the top that the surveys correspond to each end of term. You'll see that each term there's an evaluation of the previous, of the work that's gone on that term. In the box at the end, there's an A, and the A is standing for what actions are going to be taken next term in order to address a particular issue. And you'll see in the final column there, there's a blue box, and that shows that's a live issue that's going to be addressed next term. It's gone blue, so we can identify it nice and easily. And the actions and how we're going to evaluate success are going to be included in there. And one of the things that we're looking to here is then saying, and if we've done that, and actually, Rachel, if we could just go on to the next slide, I think we might be able to illustrate this. What we'll be able to do is to export the information from there and drop it straight into an end of term report. And that's really helpful because it's cutting down the amount of administration, the potential for errors to creep in, and it's just helping us integrate our systems so that our end of term reports are directly linked to the QoL surveys. And that means that our annual reviews can then be directly linked, because then we can take the previous 3 end of term reports and the areas of focus and pop them into an annual review report. We will be happy to show you what that looks like, what that document looks like. But that's the plan there, to be able to go, right, this is what the survey looks like, this is what it's telling us. We're writing our information straight into the action box, and then we're going to lift that out into the end of term report. Families then get that information before the end of term. Everybody knows the plan. What that requires is for us to have those joined up conversations with the young people, with the families, before the end of term. So we were thinking about how do we use our key working sessions week by week, as well as those surveys, so that there are no real surprises when it comes to pulling these areas of focus together. And what we then have is a nice student evaluation, a family evaluation through the survey tools, and that's very helpful. Rob, I'll ask you to come in here because we talked a lot about this with Ofsted, didn't we? About, they were very keen to know, how does this all link together from a sort of hearing student voice, hearing family voice, looking at EHCPs, annual reviews, end of term reports, organise that. What were some of the conversations you picked up on?
Yeah, I think what you've just described there, it's really useful for students and the staff working with students doing key working, that the work they're doing the actual work they're doing shows up in those documents, so that they can say they've done the work. It's not kind of written up or changed around, or it is the actual work appearing in the annual review document. And I think when Ofsted were kind of tracking through this, and what they liked was the sort of structured approach, so they could see where there'd been an issue or something a student wanted to focus on. And in some ways, it's nicer to talk about kind of things that the students want to focus on rather than targets, because that's quite a clinical approach, which sort of leads them to think, actually, we're talking to students and we're listening to them, and we're doing something about what they want. So that ties into sort of student voice and the student being the centre of everything. And they can see a real flow through from the conversations that have been had in key work, the key working, the survey that have been filled in. They can see the conversations because they're written up in the key working session, and then parents are talked to about that, so that there was evidence there. They can see the survey has been filled in. That's a tangible thing. They can see that we've looked at it and put some resource or whatever we're going to do about that in, and then they can see the outcome, whether it's worked or not. And that's just, it was so easy for us to show the work that we're doing. Very often, I suppose from an educational point of view, it's kind of easier because someone's got maths or on track to get maths or not, and there's a kind of flight path for that. But for the softer stuff, it's much harder to show progress. And certainly from a sort of social care and boarding point of view, they are interested in progress, and this was a great way to demonstrate all of the good work that was happening. We could lay it out on the table, and there was no arguing with it, that students are making progress in these areas and in the areas that the students are interested in, not the areas that we're interested in.
Brilliant, thanks. Rachel, can we drop the slides out for a second just so we can see people? And we're quite happy to take any questions as we go through, or if you want to put anything into the chat, please put anything into the chat. But yeah, please take the questions. I think what was very, very helpful was that forensic tracking of student voice, okay, issues that might be in an EHCP, but also things that the students want to just be better at, so that it's not just based on that deficit model. We're looking at, what is it that you really want to do? Because QoL is about helping young people achieve their aspirations in life and feeling fulfilled and happy. And that's about sort of resolving issues that compromise quality of life, but it's also about having a great focus on the things that you love doing and want to do more of.
Yeah.
So I think that was very, very helpful. I think the idea that this has strong research underpinnings in terms of how was the framework derived, that gave them a lot of confidence. And I think they liked the systematic rigor and the fact that it was flexible enough and creative enough to be inclusive to all the students, so that there were different ways of getting to the end point. So key working doesn't have to look like one particular thing. And we talked about key working, loads of different ways that key working happens. And in fact, the inspectors went to talk to all the key workers about that.
Yeah.
And I think that's where they found a lot of good practice, and we talked about how we share that internally. And those are things that you can mirror. And certainly Tony, our QoL manager, has run a couple of really nice, easy gathering up of best practice on key working that we can happily share.
And just sort of thinking about key working, obviously the inspectors spoke to the young people here, and they said the same thing, which is what you want them to say. Because of the structure, they were able to describe what happens to them, which is they've got a key worker, they're able to spend time with them, once a week or whatever that was. They do a survey, their targets are set. So, from all angles, because of the structure in the key working and the quality of life approach, everyone wants to get with it, which helps.
And in fact, and that was corroborated when they spoke. I think they spoke to 8 families. They were getting that message as well. So that triangulation worked very, very well. And I think what it does do is it makes sure that it gave the inspection team confidence that there's clarity of purpose around the way we work. And I think that played out well.
Because sort of historically, key working can be a little bit whimsical. Staff might talk about things that you don't want them to talk about, or the focus might be wrong. This really helps sort of tighten that up and there be a purpose to it. So that was good to hear.
And we'll come back to key working in a moment, because one of the things that we've been doing over the last couple of weeks is just looking at the questions we asked through key working, and we'll share those with you in a moment. Any questions about any of that? Anybody wants to pick up on, or anything to go in the chat? Rachel, I can't see that far. Is there anything in the chat so far? Or are we okay?
Not so far.
Okay, not so far. That's fine. If anybody wants to pop anything in there, or it throws up any questions down the line, please let us know. Okay. Well, let's move on. And we'll think about working with families section. Can we go back to the PowerPoint, Rachel, and look at the next slide? Okay, wanted to share this one with you. And again, we can look at the document, and happy to share the document. In fact, I'm going to start getting a bit strict, Rachel. Yeah? I'm going to say a lot of these documents are available. However, to get access to them, you need to talk to Dean and get signed up with the Pi, because that's the whole point. We're putting all the resources into the Pi, so you can have access to this, but you've got to sign up and have a chat with Dean. All right, so this is just a little snippet from our annual review document, and we feel it's a very helpful way of collating family quality of life information on a regular basis, because if at the outset we're saying, think back to the QoL framework, and you'll be able to check in with that when the camera's back on us, we talk about the work of the school is based around improving quality of life for students and families, and we know about Emily Gardner's research talking about students being interconnected parts of a family and a family systems model. And therefore, it's important for us to know what's going on in the family. And we were able to talk to the inspection team about that, and that chimed with their thinking as well. So, annual review time, we ask families to pop some information in there. That's helpful for a couple of reasons. One, it adds weight to the annual review process. Two, it gives us information for self-evaluation, so that when we come to thinking about how successful are we in improving family quality of life, we're going to have 70 sets of data coming in from families every year that give us those testimonials from home. Other thing that it does is it allows us, with a little bit of anonymizing, to be able to share these things through our half-termly headlines newsletter that we send out to families, so that we're constantly reinforcing the message. Rachel, can we come off the slide again for a sec? So we're constantly reinforcing the message to families about the benefits of filling this in, because what we want people to do is to feel confident that actually it's worth the time and effort to fill in the surveys, to engage in the key working. And we know that it's something that we've got to continually work hard at. We know the pressures families are under, time-wise, emotionally, financially. There are so many different pressures families are under that we need to do everything we can to help them stay with being engaged in this process. I think our student quality of life survey completion is 92%, but our family completion is about 50%. Tony, you'll correct me if I'm wrong there, but I think that's right. So we're working hard at the minute to try and improve that, and doing that through a number of different contexts. So nice to be able to share with people, the benefits, because it's reassuring. It's nice for prospective parents to be able to see that information. So our newsletters go onto the website so they can read them. Nice for inspection teams to be able to come and read that and see those independent views coming in from families. So I think everybody is a winner. But in terms of thinking about, one of the things that we're always thinking about is, I'm sorry, I think I've just got a message from Lucy saying she hasn't received an invite to the meeting. Apologies to Lucy, hopefully we'll get you in there as soon as possible. What we want to make sure is that the evaluation of the work we're doing with families is as complete as possible by the end of the year. How do we know that this bit of work around working with families is really helpful? So that's partly why we do that. Now we're just sending Lucy a link to get joined into the meeting.
I think the other thing about the family, just there's a sort of that bigger picture stuff where we're taking what the families are saying, thinking about whether there's something that we can do for families as a group. But the family QoL feedback it's really useful for working with the young people, working with their sons, and often that can be just the nugget of information that can make all the difference here or all the difference at home. But we need that feedback from parents to be able to do that work, and that is about young people don't exist in a vacuum. School's part of that, home life's part of that, and if something's going wrong at home, it affects school and vice versa, and that's why those two things need to be joined up. And it's getting our families to kind of realise the value and the accelerated work we can do if they're feeding back into the loop.
I think that's it, because a lot of this is about genuine partnership working with families, and we totally understand why some families might go, I've got them into your school, now it's over to you, it's your job.
Yeah.
Can you see what you can do to fix this? Whilst that's part and parcel of thing, we need to know, is the work we're doing here having a benefit at home? Because that's the test of the matter, isn't it? So, okay, so we talk about family QoL, we collect family QoL information, we share that through the annual review process, because I think that's really important. And if you've got social care involved with some of your families, that's helpful information for them to have as well. So that's a lot about what we do around the family work. But it's also about thinking, how do we engage with families on a regular basis? Because if we just go, survey to survey to survey, that's not going to be enough. So our strand, if you like, for supporting families is very multifaceted. So we have our weekly key working, we have our half-termly newsletters, we have our end-of-term surveys, we have a progress day halfway through the term where parents and family members can come and meet with key workers, therapists, teachers, residential staff, all of those people. We have a number of events for families live in school, hopefully starting again in the next couple of weeks. And something else we've just started recently, which is called Family Forum. Rob, do you want to say a little bit about Family Forum, some of the topics, and then we'll go into what we discussed with QoL?
And I think this is sort of a developing area for us as well, and we're kind of trying to build it up. But we've certainly seen the benefit of running more sessions for families, parents, whatever. I think some of it's driven by families, some of it can be driven by us, so an example might be if we're having problems with online safety here and we're thinking actually parents need to tighten up on how they're behaving at home or the internet at home. We're running sessions for that. Some of it's driven by parents wanting to know more about the therapy and how they can have a part in in what our therapists are doing. So we've been able to run sessions run by a clinical psychologist and speech and language team. We've run sessions on the quality of life framework itself. And some of the sessions are I run, which is just about how's school working out for you. And you'll get a whole load of information from, I can't get through on the phone to the barrier won't go up, and is it okay if you bring sandwiches? And although they seem like small things, they can have quite a big impact on relationships with families or the work that we're doing with young people here.
And so those are online events. We do them for some reason on a Tuesday, but don't just do Tuesdays because we do Tuesdays. We run them in the evening when people are back from work. So it's I think we do start about 6:30.
6:30, yeah.
For about an hour or so, and we get about, I think we had about 20 or so, 22 people at the last one we did, which was a QoL session a couple of Tuesdays ago. So it might just be something that you want to add into your arsenal of how you communicate with families in a range of different ways, because we know that some people prefer to read something, some people prefer to turn up, some people happy to do this while they're having a cup of tea at home or whatever.
And it's I think it allows you to head off some problems that could get bigger straight away. So the barrier won't go up. You can hear that from the parents. You can deal with it. Otherwise, that can turn into lots of grumbling and people getting very cross. And then the first you hear about it is red-faced parents in reception. And actually, it's a great way of talking about uniform, talking about the phones, talking about the parking on a Friday. And often some of those things can't be solved. It's just how it is. But it is a forum for the parents to be able to get it off their chest. And sometimes just saying it is enough.
Yeah,
and that gives us, actually that's a really useful tool for us to.
I think it sort of helps people to feel we're accessible, and I think it's that relationship building. The next one actually is going to be on annual reviews and EHCP reviews, and I dare say that's something that affects everybody. It'd be interesting to see the outcome of the SEND review and any implications for schools like ours. But I know that there are anxiety levels raising especially as young people going into sixth form, and whether their funding is going to be maintained, and that's certainly an issue that we're looking at the minute, or being driven to looking at, because we're getting some different messages from some of our local authorities. Okay, we're half an hour in. Hopefully we haven't lost anyone. Hopefully we've gained a couple of people. Hopefully Lucy's been able to join us. Any questions so far, or anything in the chat yet? Can't see anything there yet, Rachel, can you?
No, not really.
Nothing yet. Okay, so let's have a look then at the next slide, if we may. And this one is just a little bit about, we talked about this at the family forum and key working. We talked about the value of key working and how we can get it to work best. The slide, the picture on the left is a snapshot of some of our families who were on the family forum. It's not you this morning, so don't worry. So one of the things that we shared with the families was, we've just had a slightly different. We've just tweaked the questions that we ask during key working so that they've got more of a QoL focus. And we thought that was right. So the two questions at the top, what is the family view of QoL this week? And family QoL at home, what are the updates on issues, progress and changes? And those are two questions that we wanted to put in there to get specific information back. We want to know, if we're working on something here, are we seeing progress at home, basically?
Like closing the loop, isn't it?
Yeah. Are we seeing progress? Are things getting better? Hopefully not things getting worse. We want to get that sense and a reminder that, well, actually, if we're doing this here, it opens the door for us to have conversations about saying, we're doing this here. If you did that, that'd be brilliant, because then we're working together on these issues, and hopefully together we'll start to look at that progress. We also want to get a sense of, is anything changing at home? Are family dynamics changing? We know that family structures are very fluid and dynamic, and it's really important that we manage to keep tabs on any changes there, because that might influence how we're working here in school. So it's just a little prompt really for our key workers and for families to get used to the fact that we're going to be asking them about these things and wanting to know what's going on. So those were 2 questions that go in there. Guess where I'm going to put that information? Rob, where's it going to go?
The pie?
Oh, what a brilliant idea. Rachel, where's it going?
Pie.
Rachel thinks it's going in the pie. It's going in the pie. Okay, so don't forget to sign up with Dean to get your pie sorted out. Okay, the other bit of information on the underneath there, QoL termly surveys. This is something that we've come across. I'd be interested to know if anybody else has. What we were finding was, no matter how much we tried to explain the situation, parents were filling in the surveys on behalf of their young people, on behalf of their sons in our case, because we're boys. So they were talking about QoL from his perspective, but that's not what we want, because we've got his perspective from him. The student survey gives us that information. What we want to know is, what are the family issues around QoL? And what is the impact of the young person with autism on family QoL? And so we reiterated that point to them, because it's the family QoL that we're interested in, because that's where we can get a sense of how can we be supportive to families around issues that they're facing. So we reiterated that with our families, and that was something that
I think that's a useful thing to talk to the families about the impact, because often they're thinking about their son and his autism and what that, and actually turning that around and saying, what's the effect on you? They've probably not heard that question before.
No.
So it's a nice way for them to start thinking, which is, okay, what is the impact on us of the stuff that's going on, rather than focused on.
And I think it links back to the slide we showed earlier about collating that family information. What we see there is quite a lot of, we can go out for dinner now. We went on holiday for the first time. We all went to the shops together. We were able to leave the children together and they didn't try and strangle each other. I think I might have paraphrased that one.
No, that was one.
No, that was that. So those are the sorts of things, but those are real marks of progress. And actually, you know, we're going to come back to Ofsted again in a minute, because hopefully it's valuable for share. Those were things of real interest to the inspection team, because they could see the real life value of that outside school. And one of the things that they're keen to know is, how do you know what you do works? What's the ultimate evaluation? And we do our own, you know, we did a great little action research project with Ian and his team from NAS last year about key working and how effective that is. And that's a great way of showing that. And Ian's going to be on shortly to chat to us all. But this was actually just getting the information live from families in their own words about how life is getting better as a result of the work we're doing with their sons, and how we're supporting them through some of these quality of life initiatives like Family Forum, home visits, and all of the sorts of things that we put in place around training to support families. So really helpful to see that. Okay, Rachel, we're just going to dip out the slides again for a second. Poor Rachel, we're keeping her busy this morning. I just want to check in with everybody just to see if there's any information here in the chat, or anybody's got any questions so far. Anything from anybody so far? Okay. All right. Hopefully everybody can hear us. Right?
Yeah, maybe we're just talking to ourselves.
It might be just us. Okay. All right. We're going to go into the section now on working with partners, and we'll give a quick roundup of the Ofsted, and then I'll pass over to Ian, who's going to share with us some ideas around conducting research. So we had, when I keep mentioning inspection team, there were only 2 of them. It wasn't like they came mobbing. We had the call last Monday. It's the first residential inspection we've had since June 2019. So it was coming up for 3 years. It included all the COVID time. They were very interested in what we'd done during COVID. From a safeguarding perspective, to make sure that we kept in touch with families and students, and how did we know they were safe for those who weren't in school. They were very interested to see how key working had worked during COVID. And we'd done a couple of reports on our arrangements, which they read with interest, to see what lessons we learned from COVID and what we might be continuing to do that came from COVID out of adverse conditions, but actually we thought was good and we're going to carry on doing it. So make the most of the advice from that bit of, can we go back to sharing not sharing this one. The advice would be, make the most out of what you did in COVID and talk it up and talk about how you maintained contact with students and families and how you made sure that that quality of life focus remained in place. And certainly one of the things that we found was having an established QoL framework and key working operation prior to COVID put us in good stead for that. So if you've got any reports, or if you can think back about collating some of that information, we would say it's well worth the time to put into that. One of the things that we talked about was, because we all know that safeguarding is always the main event of any inspection, and we linked QoL and safeguarding together and talked about, you can't have young people who feel, if they don't feel safe, their quality of life is compromised. So we talk to our staff here and we talk to the inspectors about safeguarding being an integral part of QoL, not something separate, but part of it. And the little graphic that we put into the newsletter, which you might want to use, and we're certainly going to start to use it more, shows how everything that goes on in school is part of QoL. And what they liked was this all-encompassing approach that integrated all the systems, all the things that are important to young people, that are in the standards and important to families, how that can all be captured through a QoL approach. I mean,
just to pick up on the safeguarding part, I mean, obviously people want to know that you've got systems in place to safeguard young people, that you're phoning up, you're keeping your records, but I think what we were able to demonstrate is that the QoL stuff was helping to sort of build resilience in young people, that they had, I suppose, power over their own destiny, that they can change things, and that sort of linked in with the independence that we were spending time talking to young people and finding out what were they worried about, and then helping them put that right. That really kind of played into the preparing young people to be safe when they leave school. So there's always the paperwork bit with safeguarding, but we found ourselves in a position where we were able to demonstrate that we're preparing young people for adult life to be safe in lots of different domains. And that's actually what it's about, really. It's not about kind of whether you've got the right paperwork systems. It's our young people will be ready and safe. That's what people want to know. So yeah, that definitely helped us having that structure in place to be able to share that.
And I think again, bringing all of this together, Student council, how did that fit in? Our boys here are organised in houses for residential. How house meetings contribute into gathering that student voice. So student voice having many sort of strands within the school through tutor groups, through house meetings, through student council, through surveys. How all that information is brought through to support curriculum, operational and strategic planning. So that how that then links through to our tutor programme, to our Independence Plus curriculum. And we were able to demonstrate the links between those things. And again, that helps you feel confident, also helps inspectors to feel confident about the judgments they're making, because they can actually track that information through. You can show them that 70% of your young people are anxious about this. We can do something about it. And they went through the Independence Plus curriculum and looked and saw how some of the links were being made between what happens in key working and what's actually happening in real life, and how that linked to a risk assessment and what people wanted to do.
It sounds very simple, doesn't it? This stuff. The way that it links up. I mean, there's a lot of hard work that goes into that, but if you can get those kind of pieces in place, it does just flow. And that the sort of key working and the wider student voice sort of key workings individually, but all of that information does build up into what the students, how do students want our school to look? That's what the inspectors are into. How are they shaping what we're doing? And again, we were able to show that, yeah, 20% of the students were worried about this. This is what we did, and the evidence was there because we had a system in place to show that. Students are really worried about the environment. We were able to show that they've spoken about that in key working, spoken about that in their student council, and this is what the school's done about it. So there's sort of no argument about they've said this, we've done that, which is what you need.
There's probably loads of things, as everybody knows, an inspection's a bit of a blur once it starts. But we'll be happy to share the report with you, just so that you can see, because I think sometimes it's helpful to see QoL from an inspector's eyes. And if you know what they're looking for, or you know what you can justify evidence-wise by using your QoL approach, that might be helpful to you. And we're more than happy to share that.
I mean, I've just written a couple of bullet points. The progress was clear that the young people are making outside of the academic bit. Student voice was really high on their kind of agenda, and they were able to see that really clearly. And the working with families they thought was really important, and there was evidence for that. Those are the kind of points that I pulled out of the feedback.
And does that provoke any questions, issues from anybody around Ofsted residential anyway? What we will do is do a mapping exercise of QoL against the residential standards. We've done it against the EIF, the school day inspection framework. And you'll be able to find that if you have a pie, and we'll put the new residential one, which will get done in due course, and in the light of our experience. So when we get our report, we'll put that up, so that might be helpful for folk as well. Okay, at this point, Rob, I think you and I have spoken quite a lot. Let's have a change of voice. Is Ian with us? And can we hand over to Ian? And are you there, Ian?
Hi, Kieran. Yeah, hi, everyone. There
he is. Really delighted to welcome Ian and to thank Ian for giving up some time this morning. Some of you will know that we collaborated with Ian and his colleagues to do a little research study about a year ago now on efficacy of key working, and Ian offered to look at to share with us some tips for doing some research. So I'll hand over to Ian. Thanks very much.
Thanks, Kieran. Hi, everybody. Can everybody see? I've only got one slide. Can everybody see it? Great. Getting thumbs up from Kieran. Great. OK, so from last spring, summer, we did a piece of action research in the National Autistic Society. We did it in 5 of our 7 special schools. Reasonably successful, I would say. We got some good insights, and it was a good way of involving some of the key workers at sort of a next level, gave them a voice. Just thinking back to Kieran, what you said about inspectors talking to key workers. So it was a good bit of practice, I think, for the participants in articulating and reflecting on their role as key workers. So largely successful project. I'm not going to go through the results, the findings of it today. We've done that in the past. But what I've got here is just 5 of each, some tips or reflections on doing it and making a success of it. There's lots of guidance out there on doing action research in schools. National Foundation for Education Research have got a handy guide. I'll put a link in the chat to that afterwards. So this is not a comprehensive guide to doing it. It's just some things to bear in mind if you go down this route and want to do a bit of action research in your school or schools yourselves. I'll put the definition of action research in the top, so I'm not going to read that out, but it's a pretty common approach in schools. And what I would say is it's a pretty low risk thing to be doing in terms of research. There are some kinds of research and evaluation where if it goes wrong, you've got a problem. Action research, no matter how it pans out, you're pretty much guaranteed to learn something and even have a bit of fun as well in doing it. It's, as I say, it's a pretty not much of a gamble having a go at this. So I'll just I'll go through the left-hand list first of all, and then pause and then go through the others. So 5 reflections on things to do, and the first one is blindingly obvious, really, is to get buy-in. So and the key thing here is need to get buy-in at all levels, obviously the participants through to the principals, director of education or whatever. I think my advice here is the most important person to get from whom to get buy-in is the person or the role who gives a steer on what to prioritise and how important this is, because doing action research involves a commitment in terms of time and resource. That's precious, and so at some point the participants are going to have to make a choice. Do I do this? Do I fill in my diary or whatever it is, or do I do something else? And they'll probably ask for a steer from someone about that. So it's that person's steer. You need to have got buy-in about the importance of the research. It's too late at that point if you haven't, because they'll just say, oh, don't worry about that. Do something else, it's far more important. So thinking about buy-in, it's an obvious point, but it's that person or role who you really need to get on board. In terms of giving options, and that works in various senses. So one example would be giving the participants different ways to record their observations and their reflections. So we encourage people to use Microsoft OneNote in Teams because that would be easier for us to track the notes that people were taking and also to collate at the end. But we didn't insist on that. Some people preferred to use pen and paper or another means of recording it, and it meant that the output we got at the end was a bit messier, a bit harder to collate, but it meant that people were felt able to sign up. Again, in terms of how people participated, some people wanted to be really involved in the steering group, and then at the other end to help in terms of the writing up and the dissemination, and other people just wanted to observe or to play a small role. Some people were able to join at the official starting point, if you like, and other people were able to only commit to, to one term or something like that. And that, I think, would have been a big mistake to say you can only join if you can commit to the full 2 terms, and you have to write your notes and so on in this particular way, and that's your role. So that meant that we were able to get a much wider range of participation than otherwise would have done. So give people options, but at the same time, and this obviously applies to any research project, is to allow for a certain amount of dropout. I think we did pretty well we had an idea of how many participants we wanted in the project across the schools and across different roles, but we deliberately set out to sign up somewhat more than that number, just because staff turnover, other commitments, people just deciding it wasn't right for them after a few weeks. So hard to put a number on it, but if you sign up double the number of people that you need to be able to get a good weight of evidence at the end, that would be a good rule of thumb, I think. One of the findings which really came out, and we didn't discover this and really until we started talking to participants at the end of the action research, when we did the sort of wash up interviews with them, was that we'd not done enough to carve out both time and place for this. I think it wasn't a surprise that we hadn't carved out enough time for the participants to spend half an hour or an hour a week reflecting and writing up their notes. But it was a bit of a surprise, and it's an obvious point really that place is important as well. So if you're a key worker, it's the end of the school day, you've got the child for whom you're a key worker perhaps with you or needs you, or a parent wants to talk to you, and there are only a limited number of places in a school where you can reflect and write something down in a journal or get on the computer or a tablet or something like that, and that several other participants reported that was an issue. So for something like this, if you possibly can, then carve out not just time but a space to do this. And I said earlier about flexibility, but I think a certain amount of guidance is useful for the participants. I don't think any of the participants had been involved in a research project before or had a research background, and so they were slightly intimidated, I think, and were expecting that it was somehow what they were meant to write down had to achieve some kind of intellectual, level of rigor or whatever, and it took quite a lot of talking to people and providing tips and a bit of structure for people to be comfortable writing down their thoughts without thinking, oh, will this be good enough? And even then, participants were saying, Ian, can you have a look at this? I've written something down, but I'm sure it's not what you're looking for. And it always was. It was always exactly what we were looking for, but people lacked confidence. So once we were able to reassure people and sort of give them examples. So Jo Galloway did her own sort of pretend research, reflective diary for a couple of weeks, and then showed it to the participants, say this is the sort of thing that I'm looking for. So those are things to build in. I would say a mixture of practical and obvious things, but it's striking that balance between giving people flexibility and a bit of structure. Hopefully they're not too contradictory the way that I've explained it. So I'll just pause there before moving on to the 5 things not to do. Anybody got any questions, Kieran, or anything in the chat?
Ian, can I just chip in with a question there? And in terms of the selection of people, I know you sort of about getting buy-in. Just, I mean, what were the sort of concerns that people might have had, or any potential anxieties that people might have had that were raised at the very outset? What sort of questions came to people's minds before they sort of said, yeah, okay, I'm in, or I don't think it's for me? Was there anything that you can share with us there?
That's a really good question, Kieran. I think there were two themes there. One was around what I touched on, which was sort of expectations as to whether people would have the skill set to be action researchers. So I've never done any research before or done this kind of thing. So, that was the first one. The other one was about, I think there were concerns, and this goes on to the ethical issues, as to how people would be judged on their performance, whether that would somehow crop up in their appraisal at the end of the year. You know, that what's the expectation here? If I don't volunteer, will I be marked down? If I volunteer, will I be marked up? But then will I be setting myself up somehow to be judged in terms of the quality of my input? And that's something I think you see increasingly in ethical debates about action research, especially in schools. That so we were very careful, or as careful as we could be, not to inadvertently create any incentives or any kind of indirect coercion of people to take part. So I think those are the two. Most people generally were pretty keen to take part, as far as I could tell. But obviously you're always a bit wary when you've got we've got a multi-school system. So the messages were going via principals or quality of life leads, and hopefully there wasn't anything in there which gave them the sense either that we were looking for people with a certain skill set, or that would tell us what we wanted to hear, that kind of thing.
Thanks for that, Ian. And I dare say, and I think we would say from our perspective, and hopefully it will be the same for the NAS schools, that actually once you get into the habit of doing these sorts of pieces of work, it builds confidence within the organisation, so that you might have a small number of volunteers to start off with, and then that increases and increases, and it then just becomes part of school culture. And it's that culture of reflective practice that's really important to try and weave into everything you do about QoL. We were talking to the inspection team about actually how we re-looked at the framework and added more detail into the framework. That comes from just that, is it right? Is it right? What can we do better? And that's really what this action research is all about. It's about looking at aspects of practice and thinking, whether it's the rollout of the Independence Plus curriculum, whether it's the role of the key worker, whether it's the IT side of things, whatever it is, gathering people's experience of the area of focus helps us with our school improvement, and it helps us together to problem solve, because these issues always involve most of the people, and they're the ones who have got the right insights into how to make improvements. So real value in that, and I think it's something that the more goes on in your organisation, the more people will be happy to contribute. Sorry, I interrupted you there, Ian.
No, that's thank you, and I totally endorse that. And we're probably in danger of being overdue of doing another round of action research soon in our schools, and I'd like to get the other two schools which didn't participate originally to get on board as well. So yeah, just to whiz through that list on the right hand side, touched on ethical issues. We didn't submit anything to a university ethics committee or such like, because I think that would have been I think it's unnecessary in this case. We were doing effectively a bit of evaluation, and we didn't involve the pupils directly in it. So we encourage, the researchers just used initials for if they mentioned their pupils at any stage. But we did get an ethical opinion from, we went to an academic Edgehill University as it happened. So we sometimes do this where we write down say, these are the ethical issues that we've considered and how we're going to manage them, and does this look just reasonable, and they'll just give us an opinion on that semi-formal approach. So it's things like data protection. Obviously you're asking the key workers to reflect on some things which in some cases might have been quite stressful for them or quite emotive, and a few of them did say that actually as part of the work. So just considering those things really, and just trying to getting a second opinion on that, I would strongly advise that. Again, touched on this a bit, and throughout the process, at recruitment stage, and also when we were reviewing what people recorded, we were at pains to point out that we didn't just want to hear the positives, we wanted to hear the lessons as well. That was very much part of the exercise, and we got some really good ones there. So I was a bit worried about that actually, that people would just think that they would be expected to write down what we wanted to hear, but it didn't really pan out That way we didn't have to do too much to encourage people to report the difficulties and the challenges as well. And I think sort of alongside that, parallel with that, is the idea that the participants in any action research mustn't feel as though it's them that are being evaluated. We try not to use the word evaluation or even action research as well throughout the project. Not but the point there not to use jargon, but that was very important to get across, that they weren't being marked or judged in any way at all. The way that we presented the results, tried to keep that as separate as possible from who had participated. It's impossible to keep it entirely anonymous because you talked about people's roles in schools, but try and achieve a reasonable degree of anonymity, and as I said before, keep it entirely separate from any kind of appraisal system or anything like that. So I think I've really covered them, apart from the last one, which is just, again, it's an obvious point, but there's action research. So it's the staff who are doing most of the work and the reflection. It is actually a fairly big commitment for someone supervising it, because there's a lot of communication you need to do, and to get the level of support, and to keep checking in with people that they're filling in the reflective diaries or whatever it is you're using. And then there's a lot of fairly messy evidence to sift through at the end of it. It's not like some stats that you've collected and you say, oh, the answer is 83% or whatever. You've got a set of reflections and notes, all in different styles, perhaps recorded in different formats as well. So we engaged an independent researcher, Lene Buckle, who is at the University of Manchester. She's a PhD student. She's autistic, and she's the parent of autistic school-aged children as well. So that was fantastic in terms of her personal insights as well as her professional skills. And she did a great job writing up the evidence for us. So obviously there's a cost involved in that, but I thought it was really good investment, because the absolute worst thing to do with action research is to get everybody to commit their time and over a couple of terms, and then you just sitting on piles of notes and evidence and don't get around to actually doing it justice. So that I would strongly recommend as well to plan ahead in terms of how and who is going to write it all up. So those hopefully were some useful tips if you're thinking about having a go at it, or you've done it before and want to have another go. As I said at the start, it's a really low risk overall way of doing some research, and another way, as Kieran said, of getting staff involved and empowered.
Right, so that's really, really helpful. And I think you can't underestimate the value that a bit of internal action research can bring. I think sometimes the word action research itself might be a little bit overwhelming for some people, and we can think about how we present these projects, these inquiries, these spotlights on a particular aspect of operation, and getting everybody to be detectives and evidence collectors around specific issues, and then chatting about it and sharing it, how we can use it to inform staff meetings. Oh, thanks for the link there, that's great. How we can use it to link with people's appraisal targets, our whole CPD program and training program. There's lots in it that contributes directly to individual members of staff feeling that their contribution is, valued and their voice is valued. But also it's about thinking about how do we make sure that all the right things are included in our school improvement plan. And it's a way of sharing that evaluation internally, externally, with governors, part of our self-evaluation, but with people like Ofsted and local authorities. Really helpful for them to be able to see your evidence base. I just saw a message from Lucy. So we're going to cover Independence Plus curriculum in a little while. So don't worry about that, Lucy. You haven't missed anything there. Any questions for Ian while we're just thinking of moving on to the next stage? Any questions for Ian? That means you've covered it perfectly, Ian. You've covered all the bases, you've answered all the questions. If any questions do come in later, I can share them with Ian. You're happy for us to share that slide, Ian, that you put up?
Absolutely, yeah. Feel free to share the slide, and I'll, as you know, Kieran, I'm moving on from the NAS in a day or so. I'll pop my new email address in the chat as well, in case anybody's got any questions, wants to follow up.
Fabulous. And you're happy for anybody to contact you, Ian?
Absolutely, yeah. Feel free to.
Fantastic. Thank you very much. That's a very kind offer. Okay, it's 12:10. What I'm suggesting now is we have a 5-minute breather. Charge up your cups of tea, go and have a wee, whatever it is, and we'll reconvene at 12:15, and we'll probably have about another half an hour. So see you in 5 minutes, folks. Thanks very much. Okay, welcome back, everyone. Hopefully, oh, it's only 12:14, Rob. You're a bit previous there, aren't you? Blimey. That's the enthusiasm and eagerness to get on with the show. That's what QoL does for you. We'll give everybody another minute just to get back. Hopefully, there's been some interesting information for everybody this morning. And if there is any questions, or if there are any questions, we're quite happy to pick any of those up. Pop anything into the chat or waggle your finger at us.
I can't remember if it's on our agenda, but I was just wondering whether we can say something about the sort of follow-up QoL for students that have left and our kind of that's our next kind of thing, isn't it? Trying to see how they're doing in the future and getting ex-students to buy into that.
Okay, let's see. 12:15. Let's see if we've got everybody back. That's probably a good time to start because I know we've got a bit to get through and lunch is approaching. Yeah. Okay, so let's go back in. We'll talk a bit about that, Rob, when we go into Poppy's section. Poppy's not here. She's for those of you who were with us last time, Poppy is our research associate, and she can't be with us this week because she's presenting some of her research in Los Angeles. How exciting! Yeah. Didn't take us with her, did she?
No, she didn't. We didn't get an invite.
No, but we'll have a look at some of the work she's been doing shortly. Okay, let's go back to the next slide, please, Rachel. And I think this is a relatively quick one. Just wanted to focus on really, and we'll talk about this and give this a bit more airtime when we come to the live workshop here, because it might be helpful to actually see some of the documents. But one of the things that we found useful when we've been talking about, common language, common frameworks, all the stuff that David Reynolds would tell us about highly reliable organizations, and helping people to see the bigger picture around QoL, because one of the things that we do know is that our schools are complicated places, and we've got lots of different staff with different backgrounds, different levels of experience working in schools like ours. We've got people from the health service, from mainstream schools, from totally unrelated backgrounds. And they come into work in our schools, and they're really complicated places. We've got people on different shift patterns, we've got part-time people, we've got full-time people. So the more commonality we can have around some of our processes, the easier it is for people to navigate and see how the dots join together. So this framework that we use for our QoL newsletters, for our agenda today, working with students, working with families, working with partners, working with resources, that's what we use now to organise the information in our job descriptions. It's what we use, the headings we use to organise the information in our policies. It's the headings we use to organise what's in our newsletters to families, the headlines newsletter. It's what we use for the agendas for our meetings. It's what we use for our school improvement plan, for our self-evaluation, and for our annual report. So you can see that there is a framework there that can be quite helpful. And what's one of the things that's good about it is that everybody can see how they fit in to all those structures if you start to use those sections. And they're a good checklist for making sure that we've included all the relevant information. And if, for example, our working with families looks a little bit light in a particular area, you think, well, hang on a minute, surely we do more than that, or we can do better than that. So we leave that with you. It's a useful framework. You may have something else, in which case, brilliant. But if you are starting to use QoL, the starting point is that you're working with students and families. So you've got stuff under those. You're part of the network, and you will have other networks that you'll partner up with your local CAMS teams, with your local authorities, with maybe some community-based groups, part of all of the schools in the QoL network. So there are lots of things. Where do we get support to do some of the work that we do? And what resources do we need to do it? Have we got the right resources? So we can start to see how these are actually quite useful frameworks for our school improvement plan. If they're good for a school improvement plan, they're also good for the self-evaluation of the organisation, because the two things are intertwined. So we share that with you. Hopefully you might find that useful. Quite an interesting one. We're just rewriting our curriculum policy under those areas and our literacy policy under those areas. So it works well for academic subjects as well as more care related, admin related, doesn't matter what it is. You can use that framework. Any questions there, Rachel? Anything in the chat or any hands up at this point? Not at the moment. Okay, well, let's run through to the next. Let's just go back one, Rachel, because I'm interested to hear from network schools. We know that we had, and we do want to see a show of hands here or chat. We know that there are some schools that are working on alternative survey tools, and it would be lovely to get an update from anybody, anybody from NAS, or if Leslie's here from Peterhouse or anywhere else, or if anybody's made any progress or got anything to share, or wants to do a shout out for any collaboration with anybody around alternative survey tools to the one we're using. Is there anybody out there who's got anything that they want to share, or anybody typing? I can see Michael might be typing there. So let's see what Michael's got to say. I think Michael and I had a chat a couple of weeks ago. And he's new to the network, so very welcome to Michael. And what's Michael got? Oh, right, we've got something from Peter. I can't quite read that from here, Rachel.
It hasn't got anything to share this week, but perhaps next time.
Okay, thank you. Thank you for that from Peter House. And have we got Michael's message?
He would appreciate any help and collaboration in developing a survey tool for complex students. Okay, so there's Michael. Michael, can if you put your email address in there, Michael, then anybody who's working on an alternative tool, they know how to contact you, and I think that would be helpful. The more collaboration we can get across the network, obviously the better. I think that's great.
I'm wondering whether the next sort of live session that we do, we could maybe set up some breakout rooms for some of these issues, like survey tools or how to set up key working or whatever might be useful to do.
I think that's a nice idea, yeah. So one of the things that we'll do is we'll have a look at the agenda. The next meeting is in May the 17th. Please send in any items you would like us to cover on that agenda. And one of the things we'll do is we will set up a room or a space and some time for people to collaborate. So if you're working on anything, if you want to bring that with you, if you want to share it with you before we get there, that'd be brilliant. We'll look at that and a few other issues. Key working might be one. There might be some value in a sort of organisational one around school improvement planning, governance, self-evaluation, all of those sort of more organisationally focused issues. So we'll have a common agenda, and then we'll have some breakout rooms. And of course, everybody will be signed up for the pie by then, so they'll have access to a lot of those resources. Okay, so all right, back to our agenda, Rachel. Sorry, the next slide. We've done that one. We've done that one. Okay, so Independence Plus. I know Lucy was interested in this, and there may be others interested, this will probably be a breakout session as well. We're going to have a lot of breakout sessions. We'll either double up with some of these. So if you've got a Pi, you'll have access to the Independence Plus curriculum as it currently is. And that includes the curriculum content, the rationale behind it, how we evaluate progress. We're currently reviewing that. And I just thought it'd be helpful just to give you a bit of background about why and the time frame for that. So time frame is we are looking to implement this from September onwards. We've been, Sarah, who's spoken to you at one of these previous meetings, is working on that with Tony. And we're looking at making the statement bank more can-do. Easier than we feel to look at specific contexts, what people can do in the community independently, what they can do at home independently, what they can do at school independently, what they might be able to do at college independently, helping us with our thinking around moving on plans, helping us with thinking about how parents join with us so that it's a very collaborative endeavour, thinking about how we gather the evidence to show where people are at, how it can then link to risk assessments more easily, and making sure that it's as inclusive as possible across as many different schools, colleges, organisations as possible. So that it's, you know, if you haven't got a therapy team, you can still do this piece of work equally well. So we're trying to look at, you know, students being able to take a leading role in this and being able to say what they can and can't do, and being able to say, I'm driving this process. I'm interested in going to watch Newcastle United next week. I need to be able to show you these things that I can do independently because that informs my risk assessment. Look, we're building up my portfolio of evidence here.
I think that.
What else do you want to think?
Well, I think the link in with risk assessments is quite a big piece of this. I mean, we want to be able to show that students are making progress, but whilst students are making progress, they're also hopefully reducing risk because they're learning new skills. And I think the approach, which is I can do things, is a much nicer way of looking at risk and risk assessments than the traditional, you know, you're at risk from this, you must have 8 staff with you to do that.
You can't do this.
Exactly. Talking about what students can do, obviously, you know, if they can do those things, we're saying they can't do those other things, but that doesn't need to be, we don't need to kind of write that stuff down. We were talking about what they can do. And I think for students, it's focusing on what they want to do, isn't it? I want to be able to go to town. I want to be able to do my own washing. I would love to be able to cook a meal. Once they can prove that they can do those things through the independence curriculum, then that must inform their risk assessment, say that they're okay to do those things now. So the two are completely linked, and in some ways, we're sort of always thinking, is the independence curriculum, is that the risk assessment?
Yeah.
Could that be the risk assessment? Do we need another document? Because if a student's got another risk that isn't in the independence curriculum, then it should be, because we should be doing something about it.
Yeah.
And helping them learn strategy. So that might be a kind of future development that we. It's one thing.
Yeah, and really interested in anybody else who's working around this, the idea of risk assessment, because we've also got to be thinking about, you know, this is a great bit of evidence for outcomes for education, health and care plans. It's great information for annual reviews. So if we can link risk assessment with independence curriculum, with annual review outcomes, we're covering a lot of the bases and demonstrating progress in those areas which are, you know, the main reasons why these young people are with us. So really powerful. We're really keen to go, and how do we know that these risks, these strategies are being generalized in other contexts? That's where we want the evidence base. That's why we need families involved in this. So I think it's a really exciting development. We have had independence curriculum in a number of incarnations over time, but I think the more we go down our QoL journey, the more we can see with greater clarity about some of the things, making life easier and bringing the documentation together. So it's either one and the same thing, or it's supporting something, rather than having lots of different documents and strands to think of and work on that are easily forgotten in terms of updating. I mean, going back to the inspection, you know, you've always got your heart in your mouth thinking, how's everybody's key working? Is it really up to date? Have those risk assessments been updated? Has that happened? The fewer the documents, the more highly reliable we'll be. That's what David Reynolds would tell us through his research. So, you know, the more we can bring this together, I think the better for everybody. We will definitely put a little group together for that. So we're starting to build the agenda. What an exciting agenda is going to be. Build the agenda for our workshop day in May, which will be longer. Hopefully people will see the value in travelling. We'll make a day of it so that there is time to really get into some of these topics and try and bottom them out for you.
I just wrote down kind of lack and early help meetings. Also, this fits right into those agendas when people are kind of social workers are catching up 6 monthly or yearly.
Yeah.
The evidence that we've been talking about and the approach, it does that.
Yeah, I think it, and I think that early help. I think at the other end of the scale as well. You know, annual review, is so-and-so ready to leave and go to college? Well, let's just have a look at the Independence Plus curriculum. Whoa.
Yeah. Moving on plans, all of that stuff.
Where does this fit in here? So I think probably a lot of really good, valuable stuff in there for everyone. Okay, let's whiz through the last few slides and let people go and get some sustenance. Okay, so Poppy's not here today. I'm sure she's thinking of us while she's sunning herself in LA. And I did invite her to join the meeting, but it's about 5 in the morning there. So Poppy, if you're watching, hi, thanks for getting up early, but we're not expecting it. Poppy's been working on 2 main projects for us so far. One, the one on the left, which we submitted an abstract for the Autism Europe conference, which is in October, which is due to be in Poland. And this is about looking at how QoL changes from pre-admission through term 1 and through term 2 for students and families. If anybody's interested in the methodology behind that, please contact Poppy. The abstract is available in the pie, and all the graphs that we're putting there will be there as well. But just nice for you to see, you know, if you're considering a QoL journey, there is an evidence base to show improvements in QoL for your students and your families. That's an evidence base for improvements in QoL. That's really helpful when you're talking to your local authorities, when we go to tribunals, when we go Ofsted in, it's really valuable information to have. The other report was just looking at our COVID and what we did during COVID, and we did an analysis of, you know, QoL related issues for students and families during COVID. I'm able to see that, you know, part of our self-evaluation, did the work that we do during COVID help to maintain as well as possible QoL for students and families? And you'll see some of the graphical evidence there that is very favourable. Now, that's really helpful for knowing about, hopefully now COVID's behind us, that we did the right thing. But it's also about thinking, you know what, we did some new things during COVID. What are we going to maintain? How do we know if they worked, and what are we going to maintain going forwards? So helpful from those 2 perspectives. And again, those are available for everyone. Rob mentioned earlier that, you know, we're going to start 2 other projects. we've started doing a lot of QoL work pre-admission, and so that's the first one that we're looking at, that Poppy's looking at there. But we're also starting to track post-leaving school for students and families, and what will be the issues there. And I think there's going to be a lot of value in that, isn't there, in terms of the step down from school.
Yeah.
It's a bit of a cliff edge, isn't it? All the services are there, EHCPs are in place, and then all of a sudden everything changes. Maybe living at home again full time, access to some of the specialist therapies, key working, that communication tool from school, and a whole different range of issues that arise as young people, become 19, 20, and 21. And different things come in life. I mean, any thoughts on that?
Well, yeah, I'm thinking also it's that kind of closing the loop, isn't it? Because I suppose if we're following up with students that have left 2, 3, 4 years after, and it's all fallen flat on its face, then we probably need to do something else to help those students. If it's going well, that's great, and that's a great piece of evidence then for local authorities to show the value of what we have all been doing, because that's what we ultimately want, is young people that can leave and contribute in society going forwards. So that's going to be an interesting piece of work that will, again, add into the feedback loop of the service that we provide.
And I think, building on that, I think it's also, what do we actually physically do? We send them surveys and chats, but actually, old boys networks, old families networks. How do we maintain self-sustaining networks? How do we use the school to do that? Working with resources, what are the issues there? Who's going to do it? Where they're going to do it? When they're going to do it? But the value in saying, just because you've left doesn't mean to say we wash our hands of you. We want people to feel that we're interested in their quality of life journey after they've left us, because we're interested in them. But they also may be able to have some wise words for families and young people who are currently with us. So again, I think there's going to be value in that. So that will be one of our next projects in terms of our school improvement journey. Quick check-in with everybody. Rachel, any questions at this point?
Not at the moment.
Okay. Happy to take.
Peter asked, our research and work, we're putting together links to impact over COVID and how we supported QoL for our pupils. Hopefully they might have pulled that together by May, he says.
Lovely.
She says.
Okay, fantastic. If that is ready for May, that will be lovely. May the 17th, there's your deadline date. But it'd be lovely to hear how that's going by then. So thanks very much for that. Okay, what have we got next, Rachel? I've forgotten. Yes, so this is just some of the work, again, that Poppy's doing, looking at how we've, we through QoL, we collect a lot of data. And it just shows you these are some of the issues that the top line, I think, hopefully you can see these in colour. The top line are sort of blue graphs, and underneath are the sort of orangey brown ones. So the blue ones are showing where we've seen improvements for young people over time with their QoL. And one of the things that Poppy's going to be looking at is the efficacy of the interventions we're putting in place. So if you remember back to one of the early slides, you'll see that if somebody marked up, let's say, feelings of guilt or trouble with socializing or goal setting and achieving, those ones there, we look and see those were the ones we highlighted, so they've gone blue. We'll put the actions in place. We want to have a look and see which of those actions have been valuable and where have we put in actions that have actually just not shown any improvement. And what have we done about that? So we're drilling into the efficacy of the arrangements and the interventions we're putting in place. It helps us to look at our provision mapping, and it helps us to think about, are some interventions more successful than others? Or was it just down to other circumstances as to why something didn't perhaps work. Sometimes these are pieces of work that are longer than just a term to be able to notice the difference, and it might just be that. But our QoL approach allows us then to go, all right, there are issues that we need to focus on that have come out of the last set of surveys, feelings of stress and feelings of not being part of a community. That's what we need to work on. And those two are not surprising coming out of COVID. You know, huge changes in people's circumstances and then coming back into full-time schooling. And also that, you know, the one about feeling part of a community. Like all of our schools, we do so much work about getting young people out and about and parts of social groups, going out into town, going on visits, participating in communal activities. That sort of stuff disappeared at school, disappeared at home. We know it's an issue, we're on it. So it gives us our evidence base. So I think, you know, interrogating your QoL information, your data, which we can help you with, and that might be another topic for the workshop. Just looking at how we're doing that, and Poppy will be there to support that, Rob will be there to support that. Making the most of the collective information you've got, then seeing how does that help to inform curriculum, operational, strategic plan.
I know it's sort of to do with this, but it kind of reminds you to sort of stop doing stuff that isn't working.
Yes.
And within an organisation, there's always there's always room for a clear out of, you know, we've been doing this for 20 years, why are we still doing that? And this helps you kind of see, well, that thing that we've been doing is actually not helping at all. We need to do this differently. And I think, again, the framework helps you be brave and start cutting out some of this. We're doing it because someone told us to do it. You know, things can be approached in a different way. So use that. Yeah, I think have a clear out.
Yeah, being brave is a good word, isn't it? I mean, we talk about people being brave, actually to take on the framework. What we found is it's been our sanctuary having it. It gives us a security to know that all the things that we're doing, that we're expected to do, we are doing, but that they're joined up, they support each other and give us an evidence base to be able to prove that what we do works. And I think that's very reassuring.
Yeah.
Okay, I think we've got two more, Rachel. What have we got? Yeah, this is for information. We've set up a YouTube channel. Do you want to say something? Because you should take credit because you did it.
Yeah, so well, like lots of people, we've got a YouTube channel now. We're trying to do all of our pieces of video, animations and things. They're all going to be, well, they are all there. As we add more, you'll be able to see them on that channel. We're going to hopefully have them on our website as well in a kind of box carouseling around, but keep checking in, have a look. The animations, I was wondering whether we could show the safeguarding and fire animation, or is that going to throw you into complete panic? There's a little bit of panic on Rachel's face.
We'll give Rachel a couple of minutes to sort that out.
At the end, for anyone who's interested, we'll show you the other couple of animations that we've done, and if anyone wants to have them rebranded, like Kieran said before, we can do that. They again went down very well because it's part of our approach of trying to get all of our school information accessible to everyone. What we know is our policies are long. Young people don't take information in by reading it very much these days. They want to kind of see it and hear it. So it's just another part of our school improvement plan. But if anyone wants them, we're very happy to share them. Does that cover the YouTube? Yes, it does.
I think it does. And Rachel, am I right in thinking that back copies of the QoL workshops will be available through the YouTube channel as well?
Yes, they're not up at the moment, but hopefully by the beginning of next term. Brilliant.
Okay, so we'll organise the information so it's easy for you to see, and as we develop things, we'll keep popping them in there.
I can put the links in the
chat.
Yes, that'd be
fantastic. So Rachel's going to be looking at the links for that. I think we've just got one more slide to look at, which is just a nice little graphic. put that into the newsletter. And I think it's just quite a nice, simple thing to show that everything we do in school relates to QoL. And I think that helps people to see that actually QoL is the basket in which, that carries everything we do. We're going to have some huge big ones made up and plastered over the walls, because I do think that there is a lot of benefit in making QoL as visible to families, students and staff as possible. It shows that it matters. If it's on the wall, subliminally you're taking it in and you see it's important. I know it's a long time since many of you have been here. Can we come off that one now, please, Rachel? We'll just, I'd just like to see everybody for the last couple of minutes. So you will see when you come around here, on the wall it says what makes you happy. That's the first thing you see when you come into reception. The framework is all over the school. Things like, what are you doing to improve your quality of life? It's on the walls. It's everybody's business to help improve the quality of life for our students and families. We recently did some inset training for everybody about their contribution to QoL. Every single person in the organisation is here to contribute to QoL for students and families. Doesn't matter what their role is. If they're not doing that, we'll let them go, because that's the whole point of us. So every policy we have, every pound we spend, every person and every hour that they spend, everything tracks through to QoL. And that's why a graphic like that can be quite helpful to show it's not just something we do, it's how we live, breathe and behave. It's the very essence of what we do. It's our culture, it's our ethos. And every single document we write should mention QoL.
And it's sort of our statement of purpose, isn't it?
It is.
Yeah.
It's exactly that. It's exactly that.
Not, we're not kind of exams and doing targets for it, because it might not be that at all.
No.
Some students. So
hopefully there's been a bit of something for everybody today. Hopefully there's been a lot of something for everybody. We'll take any last questions anybody might have, or any last thoughts, or any last requests. Okay, if there's nothing in the chat today, Rachel?
No.
Okay, everybody's very quietly listening and taking it in today, so that's great. You know where we are if you need us. Please sign up with Dean for the pie. Next workshop, May the 17th, is a Tuesday. Put it in your diary, please. It'll be here. We'll make a day of it. There'll be a lovely lunch. And if you need advice on places to stay in the locality, we can sort that out for you as well, if you want to stay over the night before, the night after. And if there's anything anyone wants